This YCN segment is brought to you by Lake Sunapee Visiting Nurse Association and Hospice.
Welcome in, YCN Sports Talk. Jeremy Stout, and in studio today, Rob Taylor, Executive Director of the Lebanon Area Chamber of Commerce. Rob, thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And it's spring training time. It feels like spring out, felt like spring out there today, and unfortunately it's not going to stay around, but the spring training is here to stay. Everybody's reporting, and pitchers, catchers, obviously a new member of the Red Sox, new player on the staff, on the team, JD Martinez. We'll get to how the contract, the playing time shakes out, but just your initial thoughts. JD Martinez finally, we thought it would happen all along, and it finally did.
They got their man, as we say. I think it's a good move for the Sox. Last time I was on the show, we were talking about how the Sox were losing the offseason. It's certainly stacking up against the Yankees. Yankees have picked up some great talent during the offseason. And so this sort of brings us back in line on a competitive nature. Looking at predictions for this year, I still think it's going to be real close. I think the X factor between the Red Sox and the Yankees is going to be that Red Sox pitching staff. If they come back and they're healthy and they're performing at what they're capable of, I think the Red Sox still have a chance to win the division.
Right.
And it's going to be a competitive year, and of course, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. We've been talking about it for years past, where the Yankees were kind of down for a few years. Obviously, Red Sox have been second fiddle for a number of years to the Yankees when they were winning all their World Series in the 90s and early 2000s. But now it looks like it's going to be a matchup, good competitive season, lots to talk about, lots to dissect. But first, the contract. So 5 years, $110 million. JD Martinez has an opt-out clause after year 2 and then again after year 3. So they didn't pay the dollars and the years. They loaded them up front. I think it's a pretty good contract for both sides. Pretty fair, it seems like.
Absolutely. You always get nervous if they make too long a commitment with somebody.
Right.
I can think of some examples in years past where that didn't work out to our advantage. You get a little nervous, though, because, if you got somebody that's really a difference maker and have them locked up for a long time, they could certainly skedaddle.
Yep.
So that's a concern of mine. But, I guess I'm just really happy that we're going to have some power. We've been missing power in our lineup since Poppy retired. And, of course, we got a guy who's got some power. I think it was 45 home runs in 119 games last year, which is incredible power. And, that's what we're looking for. I think it's going to be fun to see at Fenway Park. I'm looking forward to going to some games and seeing some pop, as we say.
Yeah, and also he's not just a power hitter, one of those guys who strikes out a ton and hits a lot of home runs. He makes a lot of contact. He's a good hitter. A lot of people have talked about him as being one of the better overall hitters in the American League, maybe only second to Mike Trout. And I know that seems crazy. People listening might think, well, what about Stanton now in the American League? What about, obviously, Aaron Judge the season he had? But those guys have some holes in their swings. We saw, obviously, Aaron Judge. He strikes out a ton. And it'll be interesting. Stanton, obviously a superstar, but overall hitting, body of work, JD Martinez is certainly pretty good. So now that's the next question, the next domino to fall is the playing time. And Hanley Ramirez was slotted as the full-time DH. Moreland was slotted as the full-time first baseman. Obviously, Martinez is the DH now. What happens to Hanley and Moreland?
Yeah, you don't spend that kind of money on a player to have him sit very many games. So certainly JD is going to be in there pretty much all the time. So these other guys, Moreland and Hanley, are going to have to be platoon players, as we call them. And I think they sort of accept that. I think certainly Moreland last year played that role. He probably had more playing time last year than he thought he was going to have.
Right.
So those guys are going to have to kind of fill in the gaps and give some rest here and there. They have more talent than they have positions on the field, which is not a bad place to be, certainly with injuries as a factor. So I think definitely our new guy is going to be playing a lot, and these other guys probably have to take it a little bit of a diminished role.
Yeah, he'll play DH, I would imagine, most 90% of the time. I guess he's going to get some starts in the outfield, and one of the guys needs a break.
Yep.
But as for the other positions, I think Hanley maybe, if his shoulder is healthy and he's ready to play like he was 2 years ago, he could be a force. I think he can still hit 25, 30 home runs, get on base. So I'd like to see him at first base, but Moreland coming in maybe in a defensive replacement late in the game, maybe some pinch hitting role. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I think Alex Cora is going to go with the guy who's getting him the hits, getting him the wins. I don't think it's going to be, hey, we're paying Hanley $20 million, so we've got to play him, or we're paying Moreland, $13 million over 2 years, we got to play him. So quickly before we hit the break, I don't know if we'll have you on before the season officially starts. You still think Yankees just a little bit ahead as of right now, but it could break either way.
Yeah, it could break either way, depending on injuries and. Of course, depending on that pitching staff, to sort of how they measure up and how they perform with their potential.
Yeah.
We know what their potential is.
But can they get there? Exactly. That's what the big question is. Yeah. A long season, long spring training. So we'll have more to talk about later as the show goes on in the spring. When we come back, we'll talk some Celtics basketball. Obviously, All-Star break finishing up. They start their games on Friday night. You're watching YCN Sports Talk.